made in that quest for the education for all movement. And I'm joined in studio by Joseph Wasihongo, who is the national coordinator of Elimu Yetu Coalition. Many thanks for joining us this morning, Joseph.
Thank you.
I'm also joined by Dr. Judith Olo, who's the regional coordinator, H Rights. Thank you both for joining me this morning. And I'll start with you, Joseph. What really were the highlights out of this conference, and what is the aim of this discussion? Really, the underlying, we understand, is that global quest for quality access to basic education for all. But what were the highlights of this conference?
I think central to what was being discussed at the Safari Park, essentially it was linked to the promises that the global community have made with regards to education. And in this particular regard, we are talking about the ICHEON Plan of Action 2030, and whereby the global community made certain promises with regards to achievements or goals or targets in the field of education. And this conference at the Africa level is actually to be able to look at to what extent what strides have been made in terms of getting to those particular levels, in terms of realizing some of those targets.
Right.
So that was essentially the element or the main objective of that particular conference.
All right. And Dr. Judith, Joseph speaks about looking at the targets from a continental level, even as we look at the global aspect as well. And we want to talk about the Continental Strategy for Education in Africa 2016 to 2025, which is really, the African adaptation of these targets. Before we come to the Kenyan bit, how much strides are we making in terms of not just getting access, but quality education to especially children getting the formative levels of education?
Thank you very much. A lot of strides have been made in terms of improving the quality of education in Africa as a whole, especially after states declared the SDG programs that they would ensure that there's free and quality education for all. We see the influx of the number of students in Kenya, number of pupils. In Kenya, for example, up to 1.3 million enrollments were made in the year that the declaration was made, as a result of which the quality of education and accessibility has really increased.
Right. And what would you say, Joseph, are some of the outstanding or persistent challenges that as Kenya we are still facing towards meeting these targets?
There are several. However, we must underscore the fact that some strides have been made with regards to access. But there are several challenges in the education sector. And maybe also, before looking at the challenges, it's just important that we also acknowledge that the government of Kenya has tried to address some of these issues. But the challenges
especially with
there.
access, we have seen a lot of improved access. Right?
Exactly. But we are still having challenges in terms of the quality and learning. And I think there is no better proof than this by the action that was taken the other day by the Honorable CS, Ambassador Amina, in terms of starting or initiating dialogue, national dialogues, in the field of discussing quality, so that this initiative is to have these discussions at the county level to discuss matters related to the quality of education and to matters also related to the relevance of education. Now, this is an initiative by the government, and this is a realization that not so much has been done in terms of quality and learning. And we have got to engage, we have got to discuss, we have got to talk about this. And why I like this particular initiative is that it's a countrywide. It's something that is going to be countrywide, and we are going to be able to get issues as they arise from the various counties. So a member of Elimu Yetu Coalition, Uwezo, East Africa, I mean, they have constantly said that learning is not really taking place. And what makes me happy is the government taking that and saying, okay, what you're going to do, let us have discussions at the county level and see what really bedevils the education sector. There are also other issues. Other issues relate to, for example, if we talk about urban education, I'll give more time to Daktari, if you'll permit, to talk about issues regarding urban education. But essentially, at the end of the day, we are saying that in informal settlements, there are no public schools. And this is a challenge. Because look at it this way. If we can hold that education is a fundamental human right, if we can hold that position, and we also hold the position that education is a public good, whereby the government actually comes up with regulations and sets standards. And if we can also hold that this particular good must be experienced by every other child, irrespective of their gender, irrespective of their social standing, and if we must hold that the government has the primary duty to provide this, then at the end of the day, we must say that it is only the government that is a trusted entity that can ensure that we have got inclusive, equitable, and quality education.
Right, and you speak about holding those essential, awareness that education is a basic right, and thus should be accessible to all Kenyan children. And let's speak about urban education, Daktari, and what, as one of the challenges that really have been spoken about, and presence of schools even in informal settlements. What more can be done? I mean, there's the goodwill with regard to free access to education, and now even to secondary education. What more can be done to even improve equitable access, not just access, and quality education?
While we appreciate the strides that have been made by the government in ensuring that schools are available even in informal settlements where we have huge populations, this has seen the rise of informal schools, or schools that we call up-based schools. And such up-based schools have been able to bridge the gap that has existed in what the government can provide and what is needed, considering the huge numbers. However, there has been an inconsistency in the sense that the up-based schools have not, to a large extent, complied with the regulations that are required. When we look at what goes into the making of a public school and what goes into the making of a private of an up-based school, we find that there's a gap, and this gap could mean that children who go to up-based school, who are so many, like almost 2 million pupils, they will be discriminated upon in the sense that they might not get the same level of quality education as is envisaged in the Basic Education Act, as required by the policies put in place by the government. So what needs to be done is to ensure that up-based schools take it upon themselves to comply with the requirements that are needed of them. For example, ensuring that their teachers are trained, ensuring that they have the requisite facilities necessary for students to learn or pupils to learn, a conducive environment, among other things.
And Joseph, let's talk about the Global Action Week. What is the focus on that this year? And what, because it brings together, we are seeing Elimu Coalition is bringing together civil organizations, to push for this all-important issue of access to education and quality education for that. What is the overarching focus this year?
The overarching focus for this year was actually accountability for Sustainable Development Goal number 4, vis-a-vis citizen participation. That one was the goal. So that theme was the one that was running across. And when we had various activities related to this particular program, we were looking at it from that particular angle. To what extent has the government been accountable, and even the civil society been accountable in terms of the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goal, so that at the end of the day, we're asking ourselves critical questions. I mean, where are we? How have we been accountable in ensuring that a child gets quality education at both primary and secondary? How have we been accountable in terms of ensuring that children, including ECD, access education, so that we ask these tough questions. For example, if we talked about education financing, you are aware of the free primary education program,
right?
The free day secondary program, and we are also aware that the national government, at the end of the day, gives funds to the county government, and part of the mandate of the county government is to deal with ECD. Now, if there are delay in funds to the county government, that comes in between the acquisition of this particular right of an ECD child to that education. These are the issues. These are the questions of accountability we are asking, and that has been the focus.
Right,
yes.
And what would you say, have you seen that the campaign this week from the Global Action Week have really reached the intended ears, and that the message has come across, as was intended?
Yes, this particular year, yes. I mean, we began by having a high-profile breakfast meeting, and we had policy makers there.
Right.
And you would have a feeling that, yes, they're getting it. Everyone was there. Representatives from the government, from the county government. We had parliamentarians from the Parliamentary Education Committee. We had, of course, the media fraternity and civil society. We started at that point, and the message was getting in. Now, yesterday, we had the culmination of the event, whereby we came together, about 1,000 people, celebrating this particular day. We had the unions join us, the teacher unions joining us. And we also had representation from ANSEFA. This is like EYC Africa.
Right.
They were there at that particular function. So, and we had representation from the government. So, in our opinion, the message has started trickling in, the importance in terms of every player, including the government, being accountable towards the implementation of Sustainable Development number 4, and of critical importance, the participation, the citizen participation in the whole process. Yes.
All right. And Dr. Judith, looking at Kenyans' approach, to ensuring access to quality education to all children, and with the introduction of the competence-based curriculum, which is now on a pilot basis, do you think that this, increases chances of getting more quality education, this approach of this change in curriculum in the country, or what is its contribution to that whole picture of quality of education?
I think that the changing of curriculum is key to ensuring that the quality of education in Kenya is improved. We are moving from an area in which students or pupils would go through the circus as goods being produced, more or less. But now we have an education system, or we are envisaging an education system that is considering each and every pupil's interests, each and every pupil's rights. For example, we have children who have problems with learning, who have learning disabilities. This new curriculum takes care of them. We have children who are extremely intelligent and who do not go through the normal process as others should, and those children are also provided for. So we have this new curriculum envisages a situation where special needs of those children is provided for, as opposed to the old system where all children were lumped together and they had to find their way out.
Oh, fantastic. And we'll continue with this discussion shortly, right after this break, because we want to take a short break. But remember, what we've been having this week is the Global Action Week for Education, talking about, that all-important SDG 4, talking about access, access to basic education for all, and quality education at that. When we return, we'll be taking a global look on how much strides have been made since that whole movement began about 28 years ago. Don't go too far. We are taking a short break here on News Center.